Welcome everyone. Welcome to this conversation, this roundtable discussion on transforming the distribution and consumption of financial data in the cloud. My name is Alex Stepney. I head up the financial services customer engineering team at Google Cloud in the UK and Ireland, and I'll be moderating the conversation today. We have a great panel lined up here today. So we've got representatives from Parameter, from CJC, and from Google Cloud as well. And we'll be discussing this topic of distribution and consumption of financial data in cloud. And in particular, we're going to drill down into a use case that we've been partnering together to solve for. So a few housekeeping rules before we jump in. So firstly, this is being recorded. This event is being recorded, so just so you know. To get the best possible layout in Google Meets, if you want to change the layout to sidebar, to do that, if you click the 3 dots at the bottom of the screen, which is more options, change layout, and in there you'll see a few different layout styles. The bottom one is called sidebar. That's probably the best one for running this session. So if you change that to sidebar, you should get the best view. Please make sure you stay on mute as well. That will really help with the conversation. Particularly, there's going to be, maybe 50+ of us in here. Also, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, if you could submit them into the Q&A, and we've got some time allocated at the end to go through Q&A. So to do Q&A, on the right-hand side of the nav at the bottom, you'll see something called activities. in there is a Q&A, so you can add a question in there. So if you post them in there, we'll be keeping an eye on these, and we'll run through them at the end of the session. Obviously, if there's any we can't cover off in the time that we have, we'll respond to you afterwards. So that's how we'll be running things today. So before we jump in and introduce everyone, so just a few opening remarks from myself, really. So yes, you know, I come from Google Cloud, but I've worked in the industry for a number of years, for about 17 years. So I've worked at a number of different financial services organizations, managing market data infrastructure in that time. So I guess if we're stepping back a little bit, you know, there's a few things we kind of see happening at a macro level. So data volumes have been exploding over the past few years. So 90% of the world's data was created in the last 3 years. But the methods that we have for collecting, distributing, and consuming that data haven't really changed, and they haven't really scaled to support this boom in data. If you look at data providers, they are very constrained by legacy technologies, and this really stifles innovation. If you then look at data consumers, they have a really high cost barrier to adoption. You need a physical infrastructure before you can start consuming data, and that really limits, you know, potentially new customers. So this all adds to friction, and that really impacts the business ability to grow in new and novel ways. And then we have the hyperscalers coming to the fore. So organizations like Google Cloud with its cloud services. If you look at Google's mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. But how do we start using cloud? You know, we've talked about cloud for a long time now, but what's really happening in the market data space? And with this in mind, I want to introduce everyone from the panel, and we can start digging into this. So I'm gonna go around the panel, get each panel member to introduce themselves, talk a bit about their role and what their background is. So firstly, Roland, could I ask you to introduce yourself and give it a bit of background?
Sure. Thanks, Alex, and thanks for everyone for attending. My name is Roland Anderson. I'm the CIO at Parameter Solutions at TP ICAP. So Parameter Solutions, as you might have seen in the press, is essentially a rebrand of the data and analytics, post-trade and risk services. My background is really 20 years in market data technology, where I've worked in vendors and in ICAP previously, before it became TP ICAP, as part of the largest interdealer broker. So my primary role is really about technology associated with data, and also providing support with our post-trade and risk services. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Roland. Pete, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, and hi to everybody. So I'm Peter Williams. I'm CTO at CJC. CJC are a global specialist market data consultancy and managed services provider. My role as CTO and my primary focus is around delivering strategic customer-focused solutions to our clients around the world. I provide global oversight of engineering, research and development, and obviously that has led to a big involvement in the cloud and our partnership with Google Cloud.
Thanks, Peter. And Reno, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there. Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me on. So I work at CJC as a pre-sales cloud architect, working for Pete and his team. So my main focus is working with customers to deliver the new paradigm of technology within market data, that's building solutions and architectures to allow them to consume and publish data in the cloud natively. My background is 20 years in market data for my sins. So I've worked at various investment banks over the years and spent the last 10 years with CJC.
Thanks, Reno. And finally, Harrison, joining us directly from a Google data center like myself. So just
yeah, that's right. We wanted low latency, right, Alex? Yeah. So no, great to be speaking today, and yeah, it's very nice to see some familiar faces again on the call. Yeah. So thanks for attending. Quick intro from myself. Harry, I'm a customer engineer in Google. I'm a capital market specialist. So my role is to perform cloud architecture, technical advisory and cloud engineering for our financial services clients within Google Cloud. Previously, before Google, I was at JP Morgan as a software engineer, building out some of their risk systems. Yeah, and I've been the principal architect for TP ICAP over the past year and a half. Yeah, and it's been a pleasure partnering with both Parameter and CJC to bring some transformative solutions to the broker market, such as what we'll discuss today with fixed market data delivery.
Thanks, Harry. So let's get stuck into some questions. So the first question I have for the panel, and this is out to everyone, is so what do we see as like the key technical and operational challenges being faced by market data producers and consumers today? So who would like to take a first stab at that one?
Yeah, I can take that one, Alex. You touched on a few themes in your intro. As a market data person who's been around for a long time, believe it or not, some of the original problems such as connectivity, scalability, and storage, they still manifest today, even with how technology has moved on. And in terms of Parameter and working with GCP and obviously CJC, we're kind of looking to meet the customers where they are. So essentially provide more than just a delivery endpoint, because where we sit within the firm, we have a view across all of the different brands, TP ICAP and PVM, and we're able to provide a consolidated feed. Now, we still have obviously established partners that we provide our data over, and long may that continue, but the choice for the customer is essentially demanding that we have options around the cloud, options around scalability, and different ways of using the data, and obviously producing the kind of information that, as you describe yourselves, hyperscalers are associated with.
And I could just add to that from the operational side as well. There's not only the technical challenges that we're trying to overcome as a group, but there's also the challenges of the operation of these new technologies. So it's not just enough to develop and implement new ways of delivering and subscribing to data, but it's about how your operating model is set up. How can you leverage the technology to work with your operations? So you're building in more automation. You're starting to adopt some more of the SRE type disciplines, because there's no point having a very kind of traditional support function looking after very kind of new and forward-thinking services.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add, as you mentioned, Alex, over the last decade, market data volumes and the complexity have been of distribution and consumption, that they've been growing exponentially, right? But simultaneously, the cost of actually acquiring the market data and the engineering effort to actually make it useful just continues to increase, right? It's $1 billion market for market data for distributors and consumers trying to find operational efficiencies, but the rigidity and the high costs of legacy market data infrastructure is unsustainable. There's lots of challenges for how can we ensure that we have elastic delivery mechanisms for fixed engines, for matching engines, market data routing, etc. And then also, how do you prevent things such as data duplication and all the multiple copies of data that often happens with legacy distribution methods. And then the same on the consumer side, they have the issue of huge time and cost spent on development and maintenance of all the infrastructure of pipelines to ingest and then shape the data into a form that is actually usable. So yeah, lots of key challenges, and I think the industry is changing quite a lot. So it now demands this type of transformation.
So I guess the following question is like kind of what's changed recently? Like I think a lot of the challenges that we've talked about, data volumes have always been growing. We've always had operational overheads. Like what's changed recently, and why haven't we solved this already?
Yeah, I can take that quickly as well. So yeah, you're right. It's been changing and evolving very, very quickly. The past 100 years, market data has changed so much, where we used to just be distributing and consuming very small amounts of data in chalkboards, ticker tapes, and maybe newspapers. Now we have huge volumes of data and a large ecosystem of data vendors as well, which are providing more than just data, but value-added services, just like Parameter solutions. And a lot of the change in the industry is now the demand, which is led by consumers and clients, such as tier 1 banks, hedge funds, for example. The increasing adoption from buy and sell side firms to adopt cloud for compute analytics and security means they now, they're looking to cloud to deploy faster, to deploy cheaper, without long-term commitments. And they're increasingly requiring these, more diverse channels for market data. They want optionality, so they have direct access to data from cloud native tooling.
Yeah, just to follow on, we are getting lots of clients now, whereas before they were very happy to take the standard formats that were provided by the aggregators. Now we're seeing that people were happy to accept it in the raw format. They want it direct, they want it in the cloud. And also, I think you touched on it, Alex, the explosion of data. I think we were catching up with the volumes, but I think the volumes of data is just carried on going, where the legacy tech just simply couldn't cope and catch up. So that's why this new cloud hyperscale is coming into its own now, because we can follow up with that tech compute engine that we need to keep up with that data.
Yeah,
I think you're right, and you've got to look at it. If we come from a world where the traditional market data systems were built to be robust, they were built to be performant, they did the job and they worked really, really well. So the appetite to move away from them or to innovate away from them hasn't been quite as sharp as it is nowadays. And because of this spike in volumes of data, and because of the possibilities that are opened up by looking at these new technologies, these things have kind of converged at the right moment. And now you're looking at people wanting to look at different ways of monetizing and moving their data, but also consuming. And I think there'll be there'll be a phrase that will return more and more in this talk, but it's like consumer focus. It's like, what do the people that are consuming this ultimately this product, what do they want? Where do they want to see it? How do they want to see it? So it's just about optionality and consumer focus.
Yeah. And just quickly, just to add to the technology aspect of it, I mean, there's been a lot of innovations in the recent years that have enabled market data delivery to change. With innovations in messaging services, simplify migrations to containerize workloads, so you can bring elasticity to market data infrastructure, and a lot of transformed analytics within cloud. So you have a lot of these unified data platforms now. So you have a new phase of market data where you have quants and developers having direct access to data, so without any sort of integration or maintenance work.
Yeah, I would say, just to add to that, I mean, ultimately, we're all saying the same thing here. It's about freedom of choice to a certain extent, right? There is that element of being able to choose what technology you can deploy, how long you use it for, whether it's up all the time. You can add more compute, storage, and all the rest of it. Some of the stuff we're doing on our side, particularly around traditional offerings, have been very much proprietary market data, which I'm sure people are very familiar with in terms of our brand. But we're moving towards, as Harry touched on, like knowledge and wisdom type products. Those are real heavy compute products. In terms of storage, it's the sort of stuff we've never seen before. More color around our pricing, more insight into our liquidity pools that we have as a result of our execution venues. All of that stuff is very heavily intensive in terms of computing and storage, and that's why things are evolving.
So let's talk about something real then. So we talked about a lot of the market forces that are happening at the moment. There's kind of like this perfect storm. We've talked about cloud for a long time now, but let's talk about something we're really doing. So Rowan, I guess question I have for you is just around what you're doing in Parameter. So in particular, the Surfix product, which you're now deploying this product onto Google Cloud. I guess a couple of questions. Like, firstly, could you just talk us through what Surfix is and how you differentiate in the market?
Sure. So Surfix is really just a single view of all the different brands that we run on TP ICAP. So Tullett Prebon, obviously ICAP and PVM, where previously you've had to connect to different parts of our technology to get this information. You're capable of getting it down a single channel. In addition to that, the products that we've got that I've just mentioned around evaluated pricing, the intention is to give more color and enrich the data with regards to more trade and order content. Is really, that's the intention of the product. Again, going back to this choice, people are asking and approaching us for these types of products. So that's one part of the battle. The other part is, where's the delivery endpoint? Yes, we have a traditional delivery endpoint, and but ultimately what we've done is look at what do you mean by getting data into the cloud? And this is sort of maybe spoiling Harry and Pete and Reno's thunder slightly, and they can go into a bit more, but a sort of fully cloud native version of that feed, managed, operated, scaled, all of that stuff supported, is really where we're heading with this product. You're on mute, Alex.
Sorry about that. How does that better serve your customers? Like, what's the customer benefit from doing this?
Well, the first one is obviously, like as I mentioned, about connectivity. It's a single point for our data. The second thing is, like I said before, is one thing to get data into the cloud. You guys make it pretty easy, right? You know, we could deliver, like the internet, we could deliver straight into GCP and say to our clients, connect at this point. Here's a host and a socket. You know, do your stuff. But there's a whole host of challenges around operating that infrastructure, operating like the support, the service level agreements, the kind of infrastructure, and that's the key difference here, that you can have the confidence with regards to this feed that it's not just here's an endpoint in the cloud, it's a fully managed, supported, scaled feed that is, you know, we partnered with yourselves and obviously CJC.
Cool, thanks, Roland. So I guess the next question I have for Harry then is like, so Roland's talked about this, the product, the benefits it provides the customer, the end user, like, but way back behind the scenes, like in the Google data center you're in, like, you know, kind of what kind of technology is possible? What are the possibilities now? Like, what kind of technologies do we have that can help? If you're thinking about, you know, market data, we've got batch, we've got real time. You know, what kind of technologies do we have in Google Cloud that can help with that?
Sure. And yeah, you're right. So within Google Cloud, we are able to support, you know, even more types of data distribution now than ever, right? We want to provide that flexibility on the channels used by consumers, and you know that's why we're proud and excited to be partnering with leading firms such as, you know, Parameter and CJC, just to deliver on some of these innovations, right? So we have built out some tooling called a Data Share, which is built on top of open standards, and this allows publishers and consumers to exchange licensed data sets on Google Cloud. So firstly, for batch data, and this could be, you know, full historical data sets, maybe it's full tick data, you know, this can be delivered and accessed now via BigQuery. So BigQuery is our serverless petabyte scale data warehouse solution, and data is directly loaded into BigQuery from the producer side, and it's organized into logical components of, you know, data sets, tables, views, and then consumers are directly entitled access to these data sets to immediately query and utilize for analytics on top of GCP. And you know, a huge benefit for Fix and BigQuery because of the flexibility on ingestion and the I/O capability that it supports. So you might have Fix data, maybe it's previously encoded into FixML, JSON, SBE or more. You know, we also have templates and patterns that support this too. Touching on real time, as you said, Alex, we can deliver real time now over Google Cloud PubSub, which is our high volume global messaging service, which has a publish subscribe pattern. So, you know, this pattern is already very popular for financial firms for real time ingestion of data. You know, technologies such as Apache Kafka and kind of like for like, PubSub allows for market data consumers to directly subscribe to topics as a feed and then consume in real time, right? So PubSub provides all the infrastructure for this global HA delivery. It has very consistent performance at scale and no management overhead. And then just for the kind of flat feed, FTP, and file broker use cases that commonly we see in the banks spot fulfillment can be done using blob object stores such as Google Cloud Storage. So this allows for a very cloud agnostic workflow where you provision data via signed URLs, and then you get all the benefits for both parties of low storage costs and high availability, and all the management of the entitlements and access control layer is taken away. And then finally, I think Reno will touch on this shortly as well, but we're able to support the migration and modernization of the existing market data delivery infrastructure. This is mechanisms such as TCP delivery of Fix, as we've done with Suffix or otherwise, and also bringing solutions such as Kubernetes. So you've got benefits for scale. You can start bringing microservices architectures and orchestration flexibility, and it creates that kind of move and improve scenario. So you have all of the scale and load balancing benefit. And finally, I'll just quickly touch on quite an exciting innovation just to support low latency market data delivery is leveraging Google's CDN to leverage Google's edge caching infrastructure. So you can deliver market data again close to where your clients actually need it.
Okay, thanks, Harry. So you've talked a lot about these cloud native distribution mechanisms and storage mechanisms. Like, what are the benefits these bring over more traditional methods that a lot of people will be used to?
Yeah, totally. So I think the advantages they stem from a few different pillars. So this is scale, reliability, speed, and just the flexibility for consumers and publishers. For publishers, they gain the huge benefit of widening scope of their delivery to become global, and then also not having to maintain the delivery and entitlements infrastructure. So the key benefits of batch delivery is that you have all the benefits of speed and scale of BigQuery. You simplify all the operations and you decrease your costs by no longer having to maintain that delivery infrastructure. And you have now a solution that scales with your business, the data volumes, and your number of customers will grow. So you need a serverless solution that scales with it. And for consumers, accessing market data, fixed semantics in a columnar format over BigQuery, it really allows for that paradigm shift to have query-ready market data with no integration work. So traditionally, when consuming this type of market data, you would have to have significant engineering overhead for data pipelining, or to create loads of ETL processes to land your own storage environment, integrate query engines on the top. And in BigQuery, this is all managed for you, right? So you have that data as a service paradigm where consumers are entitled access to the data sets with no data duplication, because a single copy of data remains in the distributed GCP environment. And then you're able to target the consumption of data to just what you need. And using BigQuery means that you can kind of really democratize your analytics now, because developers can just use familiar SQL to manipulate and interpret all of this data. So now not only are you integrating market data with your existing systems in a very scalable fashion, but now you also expand the pool of individuals who can now gain value out of that market data. Mm-hmm. And it's a similar story for real-time data as well, where you're expanding globally and at scale. So again, this is the story about bringing low latency through bringing data closer to your end users, and also just them being able to be more targeted with their consumption, because you can have flexible pricing models, and you understand more what data are you consuming and how much you're actually using.
So I guess I'm hearing some of the common cloud benefits there. Reducing operational overhead, quicker, faster to market through the simplicity, the elasticity, all the cloud plus points. So thanks, Harry. So it's great to hear about some of the building blocks. But I guess what I want to talk about now, and this is maybe more for Reno and augmented a bit with Harry, is kind of like, well, how did we assemble all of this stuff to solve the problem that Roland's trying to solve? Like, what solutions did we build? Like, which technologies we use, and how did we assemble them to solve for this problem? So Reno, can I hand that one to you?
Yeah. So it was quite an exciting opportunity to work with Roland's team and also with the Google team. So it was very customer driven. So Roland's team came to us and said, we want to deliver our traditional Surfix feed from the cloud. And so we took the approach to make it very cloud centric. So we had the opportunity to simply pick the existing tech up and just potentially just throw it on a VM and deliver that. But we wanted to take and take all the leverage from cloud. So the tech's the tech we sort of looked at and we implemented was the Kubernetes and the microservices framework. So we took the existing application and we blueprinted it across onto the Kubernetes microservices infrastructure. We integrated that with Cloud Load Balancer, and we provided the fixed traditional delivery mechanism that the customers were used to or were expecting. Along with that, we then leveraged more of the tech that Harry's spoken about, and that's the delivery of PubSub. So giving the customers the opportunity to take that data via PubSub, and then also to facilitate that, we use things like Dataflow, which was again a managed service within GCP, we made sure that everything worked in unison and the customer had that choice to take whatever data they want. Then we also put the data through to BigQuery as well to give the customers another opportunity to view that data. So we used as many of the cloud native technologies as we could to deliver that service through to the end customers and provide them the most robust and speedy and scalable service that the cloud could offer them.
And the good thing about doing that and the way that Reno and the team have put this stuff in place means that what Roland has now is an infrastructure that is currently the exact size it needs to be. And it will be that tomorrow and the next day and the next day, regardless of the number of consumers that come onto the system, it's there, it's ready, and there's a whole world of opportunity from the technology opening up. But what it also means is that not only is Roland now in a position from a technical standpoint to deliver his service, he now has a whole kind of world of commercial opportunity open to him. He can look at how he wants to sell his data, how he wants to structure his data. So the power is really in his hands to meet any kind of specific requirement that the consumers or his consumers and his future consumers may have. So it's just, the cloud has really empowered us.
So I guess a lot of conversations I've been in with customers over the years since I've been at Google Cloud has been about a lot of the barriers to moving some of these workloads to cloud. So, I'm thinking about some of the challenges around latency. I'm going to say multicast because that's always the first thing someone mentioned is, do cloud service providers support multicast? And, the security concerns, it's a common concern in cloud. And then, things like entitlements as well. So how did we deal with some of those challenges? Because I'm sure they were talked about.
Yeah,
I don't know what they are. So
I'll tackle the first one on multicast, and Pete's got his own views on this, and I'm sure there's plenty of debate that will happen with this one. But one thing you have to remember with the current offerings that we've got, the OTC content, we're not claiming to be in a low latency space, right? So our market data, some of it does update at a rapid rate, but we're not in the sort of realms yet, I say, of a low latency shop. So it's definitely suited for this particular solution. In terms
of just a follow-on question there, just to butt in, would you say deterministic latency is important to this application?
Yes, definitely. I think Pete says one man's latency is another man's, printing or something like that, and I'm sure he can correct me on what he says, but it's very. Again with the cloud, I'll go back to the word choice, right? Choice for technologists and choice for the end user, right? That's key. What's the use case for our data? Is it low latency? No, it isn't. So let's resolve that question quite quickly. In terms of the security, TP ICAP and Parameter, we're already like big adopters of cloud technology. Circa parts of our estate are above 50% in terms of off-prem on the cloud. We're very much a hybrid shop. So, and we're a highly regulated environment. And I think the security question, although important, is one of the things that there's multiple things to comfort you in that area. So, I would say latency and security is for us. Anyway, I'm not talking for every single use case, but for the use case that we have, this was a great solution. I know Pete's dying to jump in on the latest question.
It's just what we talked about when we looked at this. It's like, you know, one of the things that, if you've seen me on a panel, I'll preach this until the cows come home, right? As technologists, we tend to start way over here with the technology, and then we'll just try and beat that technology over the head of every problem. Whereas what we've been doing of late with our customers, again, it's about customer focus, it's about being led by your customer requirements. When we first met with Roland and his team, it was very much a case of, we didn't really come with you know, a menu and say, right, here's how we're going to solve your solution or your problem. It was a case of, tell us your problem, tell us not only your problem, but tell us what your ideal outcome would be. So Roland and the team described the way they wanted to be able to deliver the data, the quality of service that was required. And only then did we start to say, okay, what have we got in the toolbox? What have we got with Google? What have we got with our own tooling? You know, and I think Reno can probably give a bit more color in how we utilized our own tool set to deliver this. But what we did, we worked backwards from the requirement. And that meant that by the end, it was leaner, it was far more in tune with what Roland had envisioned in his team, and therefore it's meeting and will meet the customer requirements far sooner.
Yeah, I think as Pete said, and Alex has said, we hear the same things every time from customers, specifically around these issues. I'm sure Harry will talk about the CME and the multicast and latency, but just to confirm, all of these problems are solvable. There is solutions. I would say to the people out there, if they are thinking about moving to the cloud and they're worried about this, I suggest that they investigate it, because there's plenty of things out there. Google are coming out with new tech all the time. We've seen some really exciting stuff that's going to come out soon enough that is going to help resolve any issues that are out there. Also, as Pete said, with the security concerns, I mean, we've got our cloud tooling that helps us manage and deliver applications in the cloud, and we've spent many months and many different organizations meeting the security standards to adhere to all the regulations and allow us to connect in and use the tech, and it's all completely feasible, and no one should be too concerned about these issues. Just, you know, come speak, and there is solutions out there.
I guess on the security perspective, I do feel we turned a corner a number of years ago with financial services. Like when I worked in the city in a financial services organization, it was always, no, this can't go to the cloud.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's more, well, how do we do it? We have these concerns, and internally we had this compensating control. What does that look like in cloud? What does a cloud native compensating control look like? Yeah.
I think that's it's a very good point. At least on the security aspect, you know, a lot of the concerns that financial services firms have had has been resolved fairly recently with product innovations, and you know, we can now ensure compliance for a lot of these workflows in these capital markets firms. You know, granular security controls, necessary encryption methods, and all of these now, you know, new embedded security features of GCP does mean that, you know, you benefit the consumers to access data in a, you know, compliant and a secure way. So there's again the entitlements aspect of it too, right? You know, it's it no longer needs to be managed, and this again has the separation of duties so that your security concern is now passed on to the cloud provider, and we can ensure the right levels of security or the right SLAs, SLOs. But
just going full circle to what I was saying at the start as well, is that again, this is the security and the control of the kind of the service. But when you manage that service under the covers, you have to take on a whole different kind of burden of that security. We know companies are looking go towards kind of zero trust and no ops, and you know, you can't touch workloads when they're running. And that's part of what we've been doing again with our tooling. It's about deploying stuff securely, having rule-based permissions, having a full audit trail, so we know exactly what happened to a process from its inception to its you know, kind of decommission. These are all disciplines that people are going to need to kind of get to grips with, because financial institutions have so much regulation and so much red tape, and it's almost like if you try and put something in the cloud, you'll come under more scrutiny than you'll come under with almost like a legacy system, because people are like, well, I don't really know what that does, and they go, well, how do you log in? Well, you know, root. And you can't do that in the cloud. From day one, it's immediately, and I know a lot of places that have obviously very strong, but you do find the odd system under the covers that is very loose.
Well, I guess if you talk to most banks around what their default encryption policy is internally, there isn't one. But in cloud, it's there by default. So with cloud service providers such as Google. So already you're moving your security position forward. So I guess just coming back up a little bit, I guess it'd be interesting to ask everyone, so what are the broader benefits to market data distributors by moving to cloud? So open question to the panel.
Yeah, I mean, from a parameter perspective, obviously the network effect of being in Google, you know, some time ago we had a discussion about Google's reach, and which is far and wide, the hardware that you're building yourselves, the fiber that you're building across the world. I mean, that's like that's an easy decision for us, right? And obviously a data focused company such as Google, which is where we're trying to go in terms of analytics, be more, shall we say, data focused within the firm, because essentially what does an interdealer broker do? All right, a lot of our stuff is transacted still voice, but that voice is still a piece of data that's moving around the firm at speed, has to be stored, has to be managed, transformed, whatever it may be. Add to that the electronic venues that we run, and obviously the proprietary market data that we provide. It's only getting bigger and bigger. I'm seeing that, you know, I've worked in interdealer broking for the best part of coming up to 15 years, believe it or not, and the transformation in terms of processes, the scale at which we do things, particularly in our firm, is the cloud is very much suited to it. Hence why I'm saying TP ICAP has embraced those technologies and is really trying to see where the cloud can have a decent business outcome, not just a passion project, Alex.
And I guess, Pete, what are you seeing across the broader industry as a key partner to a number of financial services organisations?
The conversations are definitely changing. We've gone from, I think you touched on it earlier on, people saying, well, here's 10 reasons why this can't be in the cloud. And now people are saying, okay, give me 10 good reasons why it can't be in the cloud, because it's cloud first, or we want to leverage it. We're getting a lot more interest from people in diversification and optionality in how they move their data around. And people, again, there are people out there that are doing cloud or say they're doing cloud, and it's not really cloud fundamentally. I think the term cloud kind of changes through the generations. And when we talk about cloud now on this panel, and I'm sure a lot of the audience will see it, we're talking about hyperscalers, we're talking about, containerization, microservice, we're talking about the storage options and the different value add that true cloud brings. So that's why it's been exciting on this project, because it is true cloud. It's been sitting around with a bunch of like-minded people looking at what we can do that's exciting and new without putting any barriers. And I think that general feeling and that movement will spread once people can see. I mean, there was the whole thing of the 4-minute mile. Everyone said it couldn't be done, and then it was done. And then within 6 months, 3 other people had done it, and then suddenly it was the norm. There will be these kind of epoch moments where people will say, oh yeah, it can be done. Therefore, the mindset changes, and I feel like we're getting there.
I think also the benefit for the customer is the options that they've got in the cloud. So in this case, Surfix, they can take the native, they can take the pub sub, they can take the BigQuery. The options are there. Once the data's in the cloud, you've got the leverage of all the machine learning, the AI stuff that comes along with that. So the customer gets a real benefit from that. And I think the vendors are seeing that customers are sitting in the cloud and are expecting that data now natively in the cloud, and the vendors get the same option. And I think customers also are now becoming more savvy in that, they want to slice the data away. They don't want big buckets of data. I just want this slice of data. I don't want this whole, all of this other stuff along with it. Just want the bits that I want, and I want the bits in the format that I want. And I think that's what's driving a lot of the change and why cloud is so powerful.
Yeah, and especially the fee model aligned with that, right, Reno? Like the now you change a fee model for data that is now aligned to cloud computing paradigms. Pay for just what you need. Much more flexible commercial models. So you just pay by either the amount that you're entitled to for data, or maybe by hourly usage. For example, taking data off of PubSub. So again, this will lower TCO, increase your ROI, and you still get all of the other good benefits as well of the flexibility, increased operational efficiency of the removal of the infrastructure maintenance. And I think,
and I guess the open standards as well, Harry, is the other
absolutely
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's very healthy open source community built on top of all these market data infrastructure pipelining as well, and then on top of that, all of the Google solutions that are now coming out with data share, enabling reducing the kind of vendor lock-in that could have potentially happened, right? There's a lot of supplier consolidation happening right now in the industry, and there'll be concerns in the industry about the pricing power that these firms may have, or maybe the concentration risk that may arise. So having a more kind of cloud agnostic or platform agnostic method to consume data leaves everyone a winner, really.
Yeah, I think that default to open is a pretty good value and principle for organisations to have when they're thinking about their cloud journey.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases you're seeing people put cloud and traditional or legacy, whichever wording you want to use, systems almost in opposition. But I don't think we see it this way. I think this is an exciting time to enhance what people have already got, add new services. Data can be bridged in, bridged out. It isn't just a cloud or bust. It's a case of, again, like we said before, what we did. We looked at the tools that were available. We selected the best tools to deliver the best outcomes. That's now going to be possible for people from a kind of consumption basis, and how they move their market data, how they store it, how they analyze it. It's a good time to be in the industry.
Great. So in the interest, just mindful of time, I've got one final question which I'd like to probably just get everyone's point of view on. So firstly, Roland, I'll start off with you, Roland. So as CIO of a leading interdealer broker, what do you kind of see the future of the market data industry is? Like we're kind of at this crossroad transition at the minute. It's like, what's your kind of views on what the future looks like?
Yeah, again, I go back to the fact that, we have a very established business associated with selling proprietary market data. Shall we say that we've traditionally not been selling some of the content, particularly around transactional content, trade and order data, and all the rest of it. And the color around the market data and the color around why we're executing at certain prices and services associated with that, I think that it's particularly, just speaking for interdealer broking, people are expecting more than just here's the data, throw it over the fence. I think there's going to, as I said, choice is very key, and people are coming to us as we diversify our client base, which is one of the key pillars of the strategy from group, is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to data. Some people, I think Harry mentioned it, but some people want raw content, some people may want it native PubSub, some people may want it in Fix, some people may want it in various different ways, and we're seeing that now. And as we kind of go on that journey with the clients, it really isn't here's a format that we're going to kind of say, you code to this and this is how you're going to receive our data. They're coming to us and saying, this is what we want to see in terms of content, and this is the kind of format, protocol, delivery, connectivity point. And I think that we're all going to have to change in that direction.
Thanks, Roland. Anyone else like to, Pete, would you like to, your views?
Yeah, I think just to kind of sort of pile onto that sentiment as well, and it's just, I think that the future within this community is going to be, a lot of people will start to, or certainly should, look at whether or not they can deliver their workloads in the cloud first before going out and standing up big new infrastructures, you know, lots of tin, lots of racks, lots of stacks. Can you do it with technology that exists within the cloud? Can you do it in a more scalable way? But I think in adopting cloud technology and cloud mindsets, I think we are going to start to move towards more and more consumer focus. What are the outcomes you want? What are the requirements you have? What are the qualities of service? Instead of people just blankly saying latency is not good enough, can't do you know, can't do multicast. Well, hang on a second. Does any of that hinge on this delivery here? If it doesn't, throw it away and do something new. And that's where I think the future will lead us.
I think just carrying on that theme, I think that's exactly right. I think we're going to see more and more market data workloads moving into the cloud. I think in the next 18 months to 3 years or so, we're going to see more and more moving that way. I think we're going to start seeing more delivery direct of data, maybe not going to the big aggregators, maybe going direct to data suppliers. And I think you're going to see much more diverse choice in data formats. And I think people will manage that more in the cloud themselves and take the data as they want it, and with the you know, the compute that they've got, manage that themselves. I suspect that's what's going to happen.
Okay, thanks, Reno. So just in the interest of time, everyone, I'm gonna flip over to Q&A. If we have any questions posted, like we don't have any questions posted at the moment. If anyone has any questions for the panel, you can stick them in the chat or in the Q&A. Or if you're feeling brave, you can raise your hand and you can do it live. Do we have any questions from the audience at all? I'll give everyone a few moments just to think of something. Does anyone want to ask if we support multicast in Google Cloud? Very shy audience today.
Is it normally when you're going to support multicast in the cloud?
So, well, we do. You can support multicast in any cloud using overlay networks. It's, you know, does that meet your non-functional requirements?
This is Bill Beards.
Hey.
Just a quick question for Roland. Roland, the new initiatives you got going on at TP ICAP, obviously having market data in the cloud, having the ability to push more data and be able to drive more data into the marketplace. I imagine that's going to be a big help from an analytics standpoint and from a machine learning standpoint. It's going to give you a lot more capability, you think? And I imagine from a Google standpoint, this is going to help you as well.
So that's a really good point, Bill. And I guess my view on this is, like, we're talking about data, but data is just the fuel. Is what do we do with it? And the interesting stuff, to your point, is the analytics, the AI and machine learning that we can then employ with that data. That's the interesting stuff. Sorry, Roland, to jump in.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, Bill, how you doing? So yeah, 100%. I mean, what we have to be careful of, though, is when we throw the machine learning AI kind of statement out there, is, you know, the reality is there's a lot of work preparing data in order for it to be used in machine learning and AI. And what I would say is, we are looking with Google. Google has those kinds of abilities where they're going to create utility, right? Utility for these types of things. Like any, that's the key difference with working with someone like GCP. It's not going to be, you know, if you want outlier technology, things that are going to clean up data, manage data, and all the rest of it, it's that X as a service, right? They're going to have it, and to access it, it's how well you deploy it, how well you build your data pipelines, all of that good stuff. I'm sure you're very familiar with, having built your own cloud technology, right, Bill? Yeah, so I would say yes is the answer. You know, it doesn't take a genius to work out why a big data firm like ourselves is working with the likes of GCP. We have ambitions in that area to provide services, And obviously with the recent transaction with us purchasing LiquidNet and acquiring investment analytics, there's some ambitions around obviously NLP, NLG and things like that. So yes, the answer is yes, but watch this space.
Thanks for the question, Bill. Anyone else have any other questions for the panel?
Hi, it's David Jones from iPushPull here. Obviously there's a range of cloud service providers out there. What would you say that Google brings to the table uniquely compared to some of the other big vendors?
So Harry, do you want to go or do you want me to do the?
Let's both answer. You can start, Alex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and then can your customers answer that one as well?
Well, sure. I guess that the thing that's very different about Google is Google hasn't built a cloud and gone to market with a cloud. Google's always had a cloud that was for itself. Google runs its business on this technology, and it's basically externalizing that for customers to solve similar problems that Google's trying to solve. Organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. That's what this technology is there to help Google realize its mission. And when you look across most organizations, they're trying to solve data problems. So we have some very unique solutions in that space. Yes, we can do, yes, underpinning all of this, there are virtual machines and servers, and there's block storage and there's object storage. That infrastructure stuff is kind of like table stakes. Google's really differentiating on the data and the analytics on top of that data. So that's kind of my view on how Google differentiates itself. Harry, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think everything you said is very true. Google thrives on big data, right? So we've open sourced a lot of our internal facing platforms and services. And these type of technologies have now become enterprise solutions, right? So we can bring the best of Google to our customers as well. And on the other side is a few different points of that we have our own global network as the backbone. So we're great at doing things such as edge caching, software-defined networking, and that helps, of course, with things such as market data. And also one which often is not touched on too much, I think with the greenest cloud, we have the most environmentally friendly data centers. We've run 100% renewable energy for 5 years. And I think that's just some ways from at least the Google side of why we're different. But Roland, do you want to touch as well on why we're good?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said to Bill, for us as a data focused company and a data business that wants to become a larger part of group revenues, it's really kind of a simple choice for us to work with Google. What I would say is, and this is not sort of disparaging any other provider or intermediary, I say as a nice agnostic interdealer broker, working with the GCP guys in terms of their approach to things, Pete touched on it. It's very much what's the problem you're trying to resolve, what's the customer outcome. We understand where your ambitions are in terms of data strategy, your group strategy, trying to really drill into where we want to be in, next quarter, 2 years, 5 years, all of the above. So yeah, I only got to talk about experience with these guys, but yeah, it's a simple decision for me, particularly, and the leadership team within TP ICAP to work with a firm like GCP.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that. We find when we work with multiple different cloud vendors, everyone's got their niches, but the thing with GCP is they're very, very responsive. So any issues that we have, we get immediate responses. We can get stuff turned around in 24 hours if something's not working. If we need assistance in solutions that we can't resolve, and just working with the guys like Harry and the likes, you do get that one-on-one nice, close working relationship where nothing seems to be a problem. So it makes our job really, really easy in resolving and providing solutions.
So we do have one question coming into the chat from Chris Holton. So the question is, regarding ultra low latency market data, how far can cloud-based solutions go when compared to traditional colo offerings? And are you in that ballpark yet? Thanks. Look, I'm happy to take that. Chris, I'd say at this point in time, we're not there. Sorry, lost that. Can you still hear me? I can't hear.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, you're cool.
Give me a second. Just got my next meeting popping up. So Chris, we're not there yet, but wherever those colos are, Google's typically there anyway. So if you're going back to Google's network and network edge is pretty much everywhere. So wherever those colos are, we are typically in or close to. So whilst we may not necessarily be able to do, you know, direct market access right away, we can be close to so that all those downstream systems that don't have those, really pointy non-functional requirements, we can be servicing them with that data that's cascading down. So a pattern we have worked with where a customer wants to do DMA is leave that in colo. We partner with that colo, and then we can cascade that data down into Google Cloud via more cloud native mechanisms for your downstream systems. And very happy to talk about that pattern in more detail if you wanted to have a follow-up.
And let me just add too, this is Bill. There's a great paper from a firm called BJSS that got into this specifically and talked about ultra low high frequency. It might be a good paper for you guys to read. I can send it to Pete or to Alex or somebody to circulate, but it's a great paper on this exact topic and how close we really are to ultra low in the cloud. So kudos to the cloud providers. And one last question. On the monitoring standpoint, obviously there's a lot of monitoring that has to be done in the cloud with market data. It's very sensitive data. It has to be tracked. Is there things you guys are doing in the monitoring space?
Yeah, so I mean, Reno's got more detail on this, and Reno, jump in and correct me or add to it if you like. But what we've done is we've taken some of the things that are exposed natively within GCP, so some of the stack driver type metrics, and we're pulling them out and putting them into the monitoring screens that we're using, because we understand that the way you monitor a streaming market data workload, because make no mistake, this is streaming market data, needs to have, you need to have close attention to it. You need to have automations around any issues. So yeah, we've developed our own methodologies and in some cases tools to extract the key metrics that we've associated. And again, it's SRE type stuff. Is we measure everything, we want to track everything, we want to see the trends and the raw numbers. But I mean, Reno, you can possibly.
Yeah, just as Pete's mentioned, so we spent quite a lot of time looking at the monitoring, specific monitorings around delivering. I mean, it's worth pointing out this data is real-time streaming data, even though it's not ultra low latent. So yeah, we pull all that data in, we put in all the metrics in from the facilities that GCP give us, and then we centralized and then measure them to death, as Pete said, to adhere to the SRE standards and then pick up many alerts and deal with them as efficiently as we can.
So I got one more question just came in on the chat. So I'm not sure if everyone could see this. So this is from David. So when dealing with market data, one of the unique requirements is the entitlements of that data in terms of its granularity and its mapping to legal agreements. JP Morgan, we are trying to implement digital rights, yes, with ODRL. So David, very aware of ODRL, and I kind of been quite silent listening to things happening in that space. And I know a few people involved in there. Have you thought about this problem domain? So I guess, is that a question for the cloud service provider, David, or for the wider group? So from a Google, I guess from a Google perspective, as I mentioned, we've been talking to a number of players in the ODRL space, actually since WIFIC, the last WIFIC in Vancouver a couple of years ago it was. So we are aware of, and I would say are a a passive participant at the moment. Ultimately, we will, as Google, we are looking to embrace open standards. So, you know, when the industry starts picking something that has momentum, we'll put some weight behind it and start adopting it. Ultimately, if ODRL is going to be the standard, that's something we will be looking to adopt.
Yeah, I would say as a market data provider, we're also an observer, shall we say. Obviously, again, you know, the person who asked the questions from JP Morgan, we tend to move as an interdealer broker based on some of our biggest clients in terms of their requirements. So, yeah, we're an observer at the moment. It's something we are exploring, but again, part of the reason why we work with companies like GCP and obviously CJC is, you know, I'm a great believer of if it goes a certain way, then we'll be able to use it as a utility supported and managed by these guys, frankly. Pete, you want to?
Yeah, I would say it's a question that we're getting asked by numerous people. It's obviously a challenge. And like I said earlier on, you know, financial services and market data has certain different pressures that other industries probably don't have. And this is a key element to that, is how do we ensure that the data is correctly entitled, is reportable, is, you know, how granular can that be? Like I said, if we're talking about selling data in new and interesting ways, you need to be able to entitle it in new and interesting ways. So how granular can you be with your entitlement? So yeah, we've been speaking to a number of people about challenges, and we're trying to help a number of them with solutions, but we see that there's probably a far more all-encompassing opportunity there to create a standard, and that standard would have to be an open standard. You create an open standard, and then everybody can benefit. Everybody can operate and write to an open API, and that gives a kind of, you know, universal usability across the industry. I mean, it's early days still, but it's the pressure's there, and when there's pressure, something will happen eventually.
Cool. So any more questions from the audience? Okay, cool. I think we're good. We're a little bit over time. So firstly, I just wanted to thank all the panel members for their views and opinions. I also wanted to thank the people behind the scenes that have been helping set this up. So I know a few people from Parameter, CJC, Google Cloud have been involved, and also everyone in the audience for your participation. You know, some great questions there. If you've got follow-up questions, we've got contacts on here from Google Cloud, CJC, and Parameter Solutions. So if you've got specific questions, please reach out to these contacts. Hopefully you found this conversation useful. It's given you a bit of a view of what is not just possible in the cloud. It's like, what have we done in the cloud? I think we've talked around a lot about what has been possible up until now. We're actually starting to see some workloads deployed in cloud. So, you know, something that's real and tangible. And I think what's really important is that the way our customers, partners, we all come together to solve a business problem. You know, it's the cloud service provider, it's the partners who've got the deep industry expertise working with customers to solve business problems. So I think it's great, really good example of seeing that in play. So obviously, if you've got any questions, do reach out, and I thank everyone for their time today. And with that,
thank you, Alex. And
thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take care now.
Bye.